Hi, hello, this is Emily, the girl who's transgender. Uh, I'm doing a video now in a different way using the YouTube tools. I've been experimenting and I'm trying to find the most suitable ways to create my videos. I want to do more slideshows. I want to talk about my own uh, feelings on life, on what it's like to be transgender, what it's like to raise a son who's autistic, being married, living in a very complex world, uh, and all the obstacles that I face living as a transgender woman. It is very hard sometimes to live a so-called normal life if you are different. Uh, I am considered different because of my gender identity. I was born a male, but I identify as a female. I've been dealing with this issue since a very young age. I've said it many times in other videos, but I've been struggling since the age of 3. I'm not, uh, you know, in a place yet where I feel completely comfortable, but I have made strides, and I've come to accept who I am as a person, and I don't have any regrets. I don't feel ashamed who I am. I never intended to hurt anybody. I just wanted to find my own inner happiness. It's not my fault that I felt different. It's not my fault that I felt like I should have been a girl. It's not my fault that I decided to transition from male to female. It's not my fault that I tried to live a male life. It's not my fault that I did not succeed. It's not my fault that I married or had a son with not saying the truth. I love my wife. I love my son. I am very happy. It's not my fault for being me. I've been very upset because no one seems to understand that my situation is not something that I chose. It's something that I live with, and I've lived with it for an entire lifetime. And I don't like when people judge me or tell me how I should live my life. I'm upset that I am not working and that I lost my job when I came out. I'm upset that my sisters don't talk with me. I'm upset that a lot of friends who I thought were true left me and abandoned me and don't talk to me. I'm not that kind of person. I'm a good person. I have a good heart. I care about people. And I would never hurt anyone. I would never abandon anyone because they were different. I am who I am, and I can't change that. That's just the way it goes. And I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to be ashamed of. Life is complicated. We all exist in a world where we should accept people for who they are. We shouldn't judge them. We shouldn't come down on them just because they're different. I would never judge anyone in a harsh way. In fact, I would encourage them and be there as a support system for them, because that's how I am and that's how I was raised. I never came out to my family. I never told anyone. I lived in secrecy. I was painfully shy, and I always knew in my heart what I was afraid to tell, that I existed on a different level. I couldn't tell anyone because I didn't know how to explain it, and I didn't know who to trust. I didn't find anyone that I could relate to. I was very isolated, very quiet, and the only way that I managed was to bury myself in my schoolwork or my sporting activities. And I was there growing up in a time where you just didn't talk about gender issues. It was clear, black and white. Boys are boys, girls are girls. Boys play with cars and G.I. Joes. Girls play with dolls, Barbies, and Easy Bake Ovens. And that was it. And I couldn't do anything about it. And as much as I wanted a doll, it was never going to happen. And I always wanted to wear a dress. And I could never tell anyone that. I couldn't tell my mom or my dad or my two sisters. I had to keep it a secret. A painful secret, but nonetheless a secret. I was very influenced by girls. I enjoyed looking at them and admiring their beauty and the pretty clothes they wore. And I remember that I wanted to have a life like that. I wanted to be as pretty as I could. I wanted to wear a nice dress. I wanted to feel happy. And I felt much more comfortable when I did wear girls' clothes. Excuse me. It wasn't quite often, but when I did get my hands on a pretty dress, I would relish the time wearing it. It was a lot of fun, and it helped me to cope. It wasn't that often, but when I did it, I felt happier, and it was something that I needed. It was part of my transitioning. It was part of my need as a transgender girl to cope and deal with my feelings. I remember as early as 3 wearing one of my sister's dresses. I remember when I was young, I used to cry myself to sleep at night, hoping that I would wake up a girl. I remember just, wanting to let my hair grow and be a very girly and put ribbons in my hair and wear pretty shoes and pretty dresses and wear nail polish and appreciate that part of being feminine. I was never masculine. It was all an act. It was pretend. I, I, I passed somehow and managed to be accepted as one of the guys. In my high school days, I was an athlete. In my younger days, I was a Little League baseball player. In high school, I was a cross-country runner. And I managed on my own. And I was accepted by my peers. And as a student, I was good in my schoolwork. My math, science were my favorite subjects. I excelled in calculus and physics. I went on to college. I studied mechanical engineering. I was very technical, and I learned a lot based on conversations with my dad. He was an iron worker. He worked on many tall buildings. He worked on many bridges. He worked on the Verrazano Bridge, known as the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. He worked on the World Trade Center back in the early 70s. He worked on many large skyscrapers in the city of New York. And I was very proud of my dad. And I enjoyed talking with him. And he gave me and my mom the incentive to study to be an engineer. If it wasn't for my mom, I would not be able to achieve all that I have done. My mom had the discipline to sit with me and go over math with me. And she gave me the confidence to continue and to believe in myself. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would ever have achieved what I have. So I owe a lot to both my mom and my dad. And I do feel somewhat guilty that I never shared my transgender feelings with them. I lost my mom 26 years ago to depression. She was very young. She was 49. And I lost my dad 6 years ago to suicide. He was 73 and he died essentially of a broken heart. He never had a relationship after mom died. And he struggled. It was sad. The only thing that helped him was his work when he, up until his retirement, and his grandchildren, including our son Matthew. My son Matty, as he likes to be called, and Pop had a wonderful relationship, and it was beautiful. They would do many things together. And Pop knew that Matty had challenges, but he never treated him in any way other than to accept him as a normal child. And he loved him and encouraged him to do the best he could. And it was sad when we lost Pop. Matty was very depressed, as we all were. But it was very hard for him because it was the first time that he experienced a major tragedy and having to cope with loss. And he's autistic, so it was very hard for him to deal with it. It was very hard for us to explain to him, and it was very, very sad. My situation is very difficult also. I knew I was transgender from early childhood, and I didn't want to, I never really thought that I would transition, or I take that back. I always felt I would transition, but throughout my life, I never had the opportunity to do so. I made several attempts to transition. I started out my very first attempt in my early 20s, and it was unsuccessful. And I was still living at home with my parents at the time, so I couldn't follow through with my wishes. Then I attempted to transition in my early 30s. My mom had already passed away, and I was still living at home with my dad. And that was also a failure because I couldn't tell my dad. So it went nowhere. And then I went for therapy and focused on my transgender issues and hoping eventually to transition. But over time, my therapist and I tried to figure out a way where I could meet someone, and we focused more on that. So over time, she introduced me to a girl, and we managed to date and have a relationship and eventually marry. And she was my first. I lost my virginity to her after we had our civil wedding, and she soon announced that she was pregnant. Our first attempt, and we had a church wedding in September in 1998. We married originally in December 97, and we had our church wedding in September of 98, and our son was born in December of 98. Our son now is 16. He's diagnosed with autism. He goes to a special school. I've transitioned now. I'm in my third year. The reason I embarked on my transition after so long was because I was dealing with the tragic loss of my dad and the tragic loss of a close friend within 2 years of each other. And I was very sad and depressed. And I realized my own mortality. And I figured I'm not going to be here forever. And I need to find my inner happiness. And to me, the only way that I could find happiness was to transition. And it was hard because I had a son. I have a son. And I wasn't sure how it was going to impact on him. But I knew I had to do this. And I talked to my therapist. I was in therapy for a year. And I also got in touch with a doctor at Callan Lord in New York City, and arranged to go on hormones. After meeting with her, she granted me approval to do hormone replacement therapy, also known as HRT, after 3 months, and I've been on it ever since. I'm into my third year. I'm much happier living as a woman. I've been living full-time since September of 2012, and I'm very happy. I have some ups and downs. I'm not working. I don't have many friends. My sisters don't really talk to me. My wife is frustrated. I care about her. I love her, but I can't help who I am. Our son goes away to school. He's far away. He's autistic. So it's not a perfect world. And it never was. But I'm doing what I felt I always had to do. And I'm not doing it to hurt people. I'm not doing it because I'm selfish. I'm doing it because I have to. It was either transition or commit suicide. And I couldn't do that to my son, especially after my dad's suicide. So I figured happiness and living as a woman would be much better for me and my family, especially my son, than misery and suicide. I chose to live, and part of that choice meant transitioning to become a woman. And I have no regrets. I had a hard time coming to terms with that choice. But in honesty, it was not a choice. It was a matter of necessity. I didn't choose to be transgender. I didn't choose to become a woman. I am a woman. It's in my genetic code. I was born with the wrong body. But I have no regrets. I'm proud to be a father. I'm proud that I have a wife. I'm proud that I have a son. I just want to be happy, and I want to be free, and I want to be me, Emily. That's all I want. And I want to be there for my son and my family. And all I know is I love my family, my son, my wife, and all. And I will always love my family. I'm not perfect. I never said I was. But I have a good heart. I care. And I have something that not many people can say they have. I have the inner strength to be true to who I am. And I'm not ashamed of that. I used to be. I used to hide. I used to cower. I used to run away. I used to hate who I was. I used to feel very depressed. I was suicidal. I hated myself. I thought I was the ugliest person on the face of the earth. And I just never felt good about myself, no matter how hard I tried. I could have got A's in all my courses, but I always felt stupid. I always felt like I didn't belong, that I didn't measure up. And I can't explain why. I believe it has to do with my struggles, with the way I felt about myself. But I've come to realize that I'm okay, and there's nothing wrong with me. And I should live my life and do the best that I can. And I have a son who needs me, and I need to be there for him, and be strong, and realize that I'm a good person. And I am transgender, but I'm okay. And I love my son. Bye. Emily.